Well, hello and welcome to my garage tour here in Calgary, Alberta. This is the garage I constructed over the past 2.5 years, but before we get into the meat and potatoes of it, I'm going to take you back in time to January 2015 when I originally pondered a new garage in my backyard. So this is what I was working with at that time. It's just a standard 24 by 22 foot garage, 8 feet high in the backyard. Had a couple birch trees and a pine tree. Beside the garage, a little hard to see here, but there's a parking pad. It's about 16 by 20 feet. And of course, this is about 25 to 30 years old at the time. And here off the back, you see a standard 7-foot garage door, a swinging gate to the right, and the alley is actually paved, which makes this particularly nice. But nonetheless, this garage is a little bit small for what I had in mind. So I started finding a lot of inspiration from the Garage Journal. It's just an online group of folks who really like doing projects in their garage and designing and building new ones. So I started a thread there, and I'll put up a link here to that. But the first idea was, well, maybe I can try and graft on an additional bay on the side, and that's going to allow me to work on my vehicle, stack the car for storage, as well as put the boat in. But the problem was the boat really didn't fit. You could maybe squeeze it, but it wasn't going to be comfortable. So that design didn't really work. So I started thinking about a new design. So a complete replacement garage, 37 feet wide, 26 feet deep, had a loft up top, and it was beautiful, but it was going to cost a fortune. And it was going to be a challenge to get that approved by the city with that extra height. So what I decided to do was, well, what if I actually just made the existing garage taller in order to fit the lift in, and then attach a little workshop to the front. That'll allow me to have space to work, space to store, and not be throwing away a perfectly good two-car garage. And so I started on that design, and on the outside I would add a boat port to store the boat, and just a basic roof, 4 posts and a slanted roof. But the city came back and said, hey, we don't mind it, but we think it's ugly. And so I tried a couple other designs like this one here. Obviously has a gate behind it, and still the city just wasn't going for it. I didn't like the slope of this roof either. It was just not quite enough for rain and snow. And so I came up with this design. As you can look in the background, you see it kind of mimics the house. And in fact, it's almost as big as the house. But the city liked it, and so this was the design I went forward with in the early 2015. And on the outside, you can see there's a rolling gate there. So that's part of the victories in this whole thing, was how to design that. You'll also notice inside the carport, there's a bunch of storage lockers. And one of the advantages to putting those there is that I didn't have to widen the garage then, and would make room for the lift on the inside, which was another big piece of what I wanted. And then on top of that, a lot of nice finishings, lots of room for storage, some nice cabinetry, and of course the 4-post lift and some nice flooring. So this was the project I started on, and this is what I eventually had approved by the city, and that brings us into the tour you're going to see here today. So the first challenge of this project was we had to grow up and we had to grow out. So out were going to be a little bit of a problem because there were 3 trees in the way. So step 1 was cutting down those 3 trees. The birches went quite quickly with my friend Corey and I. The stumps were a little bit more work, but it was the pine tree that was quite a battle. 30-year-old pine tree. Here's my friend Arthur climbing up, cutting it from the top down, did a great job. And once that was resolved, now we can actually grow the garage forward, which is actually the easiest part. But the next part is actually having it grow up. First step of growing up is actually to lift it into the air, and to do that I'm going to have to strip a lot of weight. So all the drywall came out, all the insulation came out, all the shelves, all the contents came out. In fact, I even took the shingles off the garage to save weight, and that allowed me to really strip it down for the lifting process. Now I'm not going to go completely into the lift. I actually have a YouTube video on exactly how that went, and I'll just link it here, as well as my build thread on Garage Journal, which I've already linked previously. But you can see there's a lot of reinforcements necessary. I put 2x10s on the walls, and then cross-membered with LVL beams that were 22 feet wide, and then lifted with small 12-ton bottle jacks. There you can see some of the supports on the outer garage door, as well as throughout. And this is just before the lift happened in about September of 2015. Here we are, we're up a couple inches so far. We'd lift one side 2 inches, then the other side 2 inches, and go back and forth up to a total of about 24 inches. The garage was ultimately set down on a 21-inch pony wall. Here you can see my brother-in-law Louis working really hard pumping that jack there. And there the garage is at its full lift height of 24 inches off the ground. We had a pretty nice day for this, but it was quite stable regardless. And there's an example of the porting wall once they were first slipped inside and reinforced eventually with full-length sistered studs at various locations throughout the garage. So this sturdied it up a great deal, and I would recommend this. The engineer actually didn't require it, but I think it had to have been necessary. It's the only way it was stable. And here it is again, bolted, attached to the ground, and sistered with full-length studs about every third or fourth stud. After that, my good friend Matt at BMC Builders here in Calgary framed the extension for the garage and also went to work on framing the carport. He did this over the course of a week while I had to work. So that worked out well for me and worked out well for him, I hope. And here is the completed garage framed, and now we can move on to actually discussing how it all ended up. So here we are, and before I go on, I'll just note that it is December, so this isn't the nicest time of year to be doing this video. Both the inside and the outside of the garage aren't their best shape, but I decided, hell, why not? This shows what I wanted it for, frankly, being able to use it in the winter. And here we see the boat storage, which has turned out to be excellent. I have a little bit of trouble with the north wind, which comes from the left side, blowing on top of the boat in the wintertime, but it's not too bad. Here at the front of the garage, the first thing you'll notice there's the 2 feet gap at the bottom there, and that's where the lift occurred. And here's where the gas line ran into the house, so I had to trench this. Ran into a particularly large and ugly rock when doing so. So you can kind of notice the garage looks a little odd with the siding not right to the bottom, but that was the way I decided to finish it with a hardy board. Over here is a 16 by 10 shed, which is now purely my wife's domain. I'm no longer allowed to use that, which works fine for me because I have the garage and a whole bunch of other storage that I incorporated. Again, on the bottom, that's hardy board with just a deck over paint from Bear on it. Coming into the carport, or the boat port rather, you'll notice these storage cabinets. So these are Mastercraft Maximum, and I put these on the outside because on the inside I was going to lose a little bit of room with the lift, and so where I used to have cabinets, I didn't have cabinets anymore. So instead I put them on the outside and then use those for cold storage, which pretty much works for anything that won't freeze, and that's probably about 80% of the stuff that I have. So basically these stay in and out of the snow, keeps them out of the elements. They are lockable, and I use them for assorted things from sports equipment, motor oil. Obviously these are jacks and truck parts and tarps, so we can kind of use for all of the above, and they're really nice equipment actually. Now looking up in the carport, you'll notice I got a couple doors up here, and I'll just insert a couple pictures here showing you what the inside looks like. So I use this for storing long stock such as vinyl siding or long boards. It's just a convenient place to put things. I thought it was space that was useless otherwise, and it does leave me access to the attic if I ever want it from the outside and from the carport area. Now looking up to the ceiling, I've installed a large fan, and this is actually to help keep the boat dry after a wet day at the lake, as well as some electricity for the lights. Now moving to the back of the boat port, we have the automated gate that I created. Now I do have another video on that, which I can put in a link for here. But basically it's controlled by an Eleco 1400 gate opener. It's chain driven. The gate is built on 2 wheels. Thanks to my buddy Scott for helping to do the welding on that. So you notice you just hit the button and the gate starts to open all by itself. One nice thing is I can demonstrate it works in the winter. Most of the snow unfortunately is melted here, but it does work in the snow. The gate itself is about 400 pounds, so it just literally pushes the snow right out of the way. And by riding on 2 wheels, it never really gets high centered, and so it's always balanced. I did have to add a little bit of extra concrete along the ground. You can kind of see a little bit of it in there, just because in areas where it was soft it would sink in. Now around the backside here you can see there's the gate opener itself, a little magnetic stop on there, and then a couple of really large 6x6 posts. And here you'll notice I have a security system. I have cameras throughout. I have one here, and then over on the other side of the garage, kind of hidden up in the eaves, you have another one. I had an incident where someone drove into my old fence and destroyed it. severed a 4x4 right at the ground, so I decided I never wanted to see that happen again. So bigger posts and a security system right here now. So next we're going to talk about the boat port itself. So the boat is a 2013 Tigé Z1, and it's about 24 feet from the front of the trailer to the back of the swim platform. Terrific boat, by the way, but I wanted to keep it out of the elements, and here I actually hook it up to power. There's a battery tender inside, keeps the boat happy and the battery's happy all winter. Up top here you can see I've hung the bimini along the side, and there's also some hooks up top you can't see for hanging a life jacket to dry them off in the summertime. Now here, this is actually what I call my wood closet. It's for storing large sheets of wood. Better to keep them outside than taking up room in the garage, or the shed is where they used to be. Again, I got a little bit more electricity out here, all GFCI circuited for the gate as well as powering the light inside the shed. But the wood closet is nice. Not quite finished it here yet. It's a little bit ugly looking, but it's still coming along. And as you can see, closing the gate again, push of a button. It's been running this way for 2 years. It's one of the first things I built. It has never been aligned since. So there's a couple guides on the far post. You can see there's wheels, total of 8, that kind of keep it running straight and true. And then there's another guide wheel right up there at the top, which will nudge it back into place. And it sits there happily. So next we're going to talk about the garage itself. So the garage door is about 2 feet higher than the previous. It's about a 9-foot door. And just take a note of this little dryer vent here. I actually use this as an exhaust exit port. So I hook the vehicles up with a 4-inch dryer hose and easily vent them outside in the wintertime. Here's the garage door opening remote. So I'll just punch in the code here and then we'll take a look on the inside. So the first thing you'll note, of course, I do have all 3 vehicles in there, so this was a goal of mine at the beginning of the project, to fit all 3 in, and they fit in quite comfortably. You do notice the garage door doesn't go up all the way. It's quite intentional. I don't need it to go up all the way 99% of the time, and when the Trans Am's at its maximum height, you can see that it can impact the windshield if I run it up much higher than that. So I just leave it there. It gives me extra clearance. Speaking of clearance, there's not a lot of clearance between the 2 cars. There's one thing I do regret is not lifting the garage about another 2 inches higher. But nonetheless, it does work. The measurements paid off, but I could have had a little bit more clearance. Those are the wheels for relocating the lift. You just put them under the lift, lower it, and then wheel it around. And of course there's the entry ramps for the lift as well. You notice the lift is in blue and white. That's no accident. It's a Lift King Pro King 8. I highly recommend them. Made in China, but sold here in Calgary, owned here in Calgary. Also have a battery tender on this car. You can tell that I'm a big fan of battery tenders. So that is the lift and the 3 cars parked. So we'll get the Avalanche out of here. So the Avalanche has been removed, and we're just going to take a walk in the people door. First of all, we'll notice the puppy door, of course, just in case. It's permanently closed right now because we don't have a puppy, but it could be used for cats in the future, hopefully. And walking in, see the Avalanche is missing, and I want to again say this is kind of winter time, just random shop day, so I didn't really go out of my way to clean the place up. I wanted to show it as it is on a general day. We'll talk a bit about the cabinets. So these are New Age Performance Plus cabinets in blue. You've probably noticed by now, but I tend to like things that are blue and things that are white. Here's an example of one of the pull-out drawers with my socket set in it. And this also has a base cabinet with another single pull-out drawer in it. These things are terrific. I kind of intermixed between them throughout the shop. This entire island is actually mobile. I'll show that off in a little bit here. But I really didn't like the idea of having a central storage cabinet. I don't like having to always go to the same place to get every single tool. I like to put them where I need them. Tops are made of bamboo, treated with triple thick varathane. Probably about 15 coats. I run a durable finish more than a beautiful finish. And just in case I want to make a mess, I've put this roll of building paper on the end so I can actually roll it out and work on greasy parts and tools or do some painting and things like that. And as we come around the front, a nice little overhang here for a couple stools if I want to sit and watch a hockey game or a football game. Pick those up at Princess Auto here in Calgary. Next we're going to talk a little bit about storage. You remember I had those cabinets outside. Well, not everything can get stored outside, so I added these shelves. Now, when I first built these, they're fastened up to the truss. You just threaded rod. They have two sizes, the big bins on the top, smaller bins on the bottom. And I work with these Rubbermaid bins right through the entire process. They were usually on the floor. It's nice to have them up supported in the ceiling now. The shelves are strong enough I can hang off them if I want to. And store all the things I don't use a lot, whether it's just plumbing supplies or tiling supplies or power cords, things like that. And all labeled as such. And then here I also have a power reel I picked up from Princess Auto. Really handy, just like the air hose. You can just kind of pull it wherever you want to use it. And then here we'll start looking at the closet. So there's two of these, one on either side. This one has my air compressor in it, as well as a central vacuum. So we'll crack this open and take a little look. So these are insulated zones, largely for sound because these devices are loud. It is vented up into the attic though, just in case it gets too hot in the summertime for the compressor. And then for the central vac, I also have it running through a dust deputy. And thanks Woody for that. These things are terrific. And the central vac just vents outside from there. It hardly sees any particulate at all. And also I have my electrical panel in here, 220 60 amp. Allows me to run pretty much anything I want, including the welder and the lift, and a whole bunch of circuits. And then over on the side here, I have a SmartThings home automation plug, which allows me to turn on and off the central vac from my phone. So if I'm vacuuming out the boat, turn on and off with the device in my pocket. Over on this side, I have a DeWalt saw stand with 2 chop saws and a drill press attached to it, storage underneath with some boxes. I do a lot of woodworking. It's probably the thing I do the most of, so finding a permanent place for these was critical. This stand is nice because it allows you to cut really long boards up to 16 feet. I've also mounted it on wheels, and I can move the base around, and it moves surprisingly well on this flooring, which we'll talk about in a bit. Just give it a tug here, you can see it moves extremely easily. Why 2 chop saws, you ask? Well, one's for wood and one's for metal. Simple enough. Now in this closet we have the furnace. So this is an old Airco, built in Vancouver, probably before I was born. But it just keeps going. I checked it out, it's still working fine. No leaks, and the air kind of comes in the top and goes out the bottom. You can't really see it there, but it's all vented underneath these cabinets, so the nice thing is you get nice warm toasty feet in the wintertime, and any water underneath the floor will also get evaporated pretty easily with the hot air down there. And then on the top there's a 16-inch input with a reusable filter. Just got to wash out maybe once a season. It looks okay. Digital thermostat, which I'm also going to add a relay to control from SmartThings as well, so I can turn on and off on cold days. So that's the other closet. I really like the closet design. It kind of keeps the loud, ugly things hidden from view. So next we're going to talk about illumination. First is this southern facing window, and this thing is just terrific in Canada where we don't have a lot of sun in the winter, and the sun is really at a low angle in the sky. As you can see, middle of the afternoon, the skylight's not doing anything in December. There are 2 skylights. I'll talk about them a bit. They really are a nightmare to install and to waterproof. The biggest challenge isn't so much the skylight itself, but it's all the drywalling and insulation and vapor barrier on the inside. I wouldn't do it again if I had the choice, but nonetheless they're there. They look quite nice. Elsewhere I've got 10 of these double T8 fixtures. They're running TL950 bulbs, Philips, daylight bulbs, as well as high on the color rendering index, which makes them really nice for if you want to do any painting and that sort of thing. Again, there's that terrific window. And just while I'm here, notice I've got this wood storage shelves. Really handy for storing long stock. I can store up to 16-foot boards here. Now, next we're going to flip the fluorescence off and just see these small LEDs. So I've got 8 of these little pot light LEDs. They're adjustable, dimmable. They're also on a motion circuit. So as soon as the garage door opens, a person steps in or a car comes in, they flip on. So I don't have to rely on the garage door opener for that, which is 8500C by LiftMaster, a jack shaft opener, which is quite nice. So I don't have to have it in the middle of the garage in the way of where the car is. Garage door itself is of course insulated, 9 foot by 16 foot. So next we're going to talk about my absolute favorite feature, and that's the Swisstrax RibTrax flooring. These are 16-inch tiles roughly. They're vented to the ground, and they just look absolutely striking. They're really my favorite part of this entire build. I've got them in 3 colors, the gray, the silver, and the blue. And in Canada, of course, we get a lot of water, and so in the wintertime, I get a pool of water right in this area here, and I just hated it. It was my least favorite part of the old garage. One of the reasons I wanted to get rid of it. So with this flooring, it now either keeps the water just below my feet so I don't notice it, where it can evaporate, or it actually drains forward, believe it or not, which is another problem with the old slab. So I thought, well, I'll just accept that that's going to happen anyway and put in a drainage trench. So I actually had to scarify the concrete to bring it down to grade, which you can see in this video here. Then also there's this drainage trench, and I've run a couple power wires through it out to the table saw, but otherwise it's just used to drain water out under the garage and to the exterior. So this allows the garage to stay dry, it allows you to work on the floor, it's comfortable, it's warm, tools roll over it better than concrete. I really just can't say enough great things about the Swisstrax flooring. Probably my favorite feature. One other thing I'll mention is I waterproof the walls in the union with the walls on the floor so that I could hose down the walls with a pressure washer if I want, using bare marquee exterior paint. Completely treated the baseboards and then silicone under the walls as well. So it allows the place to be completely waterproof. You can pull these tiles out once a year, wash them off, but you don't have to. Just a quick note here, I have another emergency turnoff for the car lift. The car lift can be moved from one side to the other, so I have two of these switches, and here's the plug if I happen to move it over to the other side. So that's just to keep my options open when I was doing the design and the build process for this garage. I love the floor. Did I mention it? And one last thing I'm going to note here. First, I just see how I can easily roll this very heavy tool cabinet across the floor. But down here, I actually have some anchor hooks, and they're kind of hard to see. They're right into the concrete underneath here. And I use those if I ever want to pull something into the garage. So whether it's a trailer or maybe it's a vehicle I want to get on the lift that doesn't happen to have an engine. So I just hook up a little ATV winch right onto there and can tug in whatever I would like onto the lift or into the garage. So one more thing I wanted to note was storage in the attic. So when I did extend the garage by 7 feet, I added specialized trusses so I could put some storage up here in this extra attic space, which is convenient for some of the things that I use even less often. And just a quick note about the cabinets. I didn't mention it in the lighting section, but I've added LED strip lights here just to light up the counter. So it's nice when you don't want to turn on all the other lights. It just gives you a nice little area to work when you need to do specialized work on the countertop. And finally, I have Ethernet. I have cable along with the security cameras, one to run down a special 1.5-inch pipe from the house. So it allows me to watch TV or surf on the garage journal. The TV's tipped up here on hinges just so I can access behind and use that extra storage space as well. And it tips down to a nice angle. So, last but not least, the most important part, the beer. So, nice little scratch and dent sale, Princess Auto once again. And to store my Budweiser. So, that's that. Thanks to the folks at Garage Journal who really helped out. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got some ideas. I know I've learned a lot from watching all of you. So, happy wrenching, and thanks for following. I also want to thank a couple folks here, buddies Brent and Chad for helping clean out the old garage, cousin Tony for concrete, Alex for any job I could throw at him, Uncle Bernie helped out with all the paints. My neighbors Albert, Larry, and Ryan really stepped up whenever I needed an extra hand and didn't have them. Uncle Scott for helping build the gate, doing the welding. My dad Zub for all kinds of things, support, and helping with doing the insulation. Brother-in-law Lewis, again, any job you could throw at him. And my buddy Matt, BMC Builders here in Calgary, look him up if you ever need any framing done. And my best buddies Corey for, again, anytime I needed a hand. And of course, my beautiful wife who put up with all of this for the past 2.5 years. So thank you. That's it. This has been Johnny Mo. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Please give me a follow and like, and we'll see what comes next.